Hello and welcome, fellow awesomeologists, to Awesomeology. I'm Sue.
And I'm Ben, and in this episode, we're planning to talk about Threads, the newest social media channel from Meta, along with how we determine if it's time to join or leave a social media site, channel, place, whatever you want to call it, right, Sue?
Thing, whatever. Yeah. And no spoilers, but it's been an exciting 2023. We've had the opportunity to shake things up, look at strategy, not just for ourselves, but for our clients. And so Threads is just one more exciting new challenge
That's right.
that we get to add to the year. So, but let's start here. In case people are not perpetually thinking about online marketing the way you and I are, can you tell people a little bit about what Threads is?
Yeah, Twitter by Meta. Thank you.
All right.
Nice episode. Thanks,
Yeah.
Sue.
Have a good day.
Unless you've been living under a rock, I'm sure people listeners have seen the memes or some of the pretty entertaining stuff about what, I can't really hide it much, like what a direct ripoff Threads is of Twitter.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's the same thing. I mean, sure, maybe some subtle differences, and we'll dive into maybe some of the differences on the back end that make it just a tad different than Twitter, and might help people understand how to use it, whether or not to use it, things like that. But really, at the end of the day, that's what it is. I mean, it's a text-based social media platform, with some ability for photo and video, and as things continue to develop, ads and stuff like that will all be part of the mix, I'm sure, right?
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, just really that platform from Meta that'll operate in a similar way to Twitter, really based on being driven by conversations and creating engagement through that medium, text and conversation, instead of images and video and animation and algorithm and everything else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I have seen it referred to as nice Twitter.
Oh yeah.
Which is, that sounds good.
Sure.
That sounds good. A lot of the features are not sort of completely put together. The one major difference. Listen, I have to correct you, because major difference between Threads and Twitter is that Threads has a 500 character limit. So
right. Yeah.
Massive. Anyway.
Yeah. So Threads is just your long-winded friend, your long-winded version
right.
of
Right.
of
So
Twitter.
Twitter is you if it was nicer. Threads is me.
Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Microblogging site. Over 100 million users signed up for this in the first week. I think personally that number is a little bit skewed, because the enrollment for Threads comes straight through your Instagram. So I would guess a really big portion of those people were already Instagram users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so prone to knowing that it is a click of a button.
Right.
And all of your information floods over from Instagram. Pretty simple sign up.
Yeah.
That probably had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
I was just reading something today, though, that said they had topped out at about at almost 50 million daily users at their peak, and now they're sort of maybe settling into what a more normal average daily user count will be, which is about half that right now. So it was the, man, it was the hot sexiness for about 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, and it was simple, right? I mean, to your point of, click of a button and you're enrolled. Sure, that very likely inflated the numbers a little bit, to any kind of measurement of how many people really signed up, as I'm doing air quotes on an audio podcast. But at the same time, like, good on Meta to make it super easy, right? And I think that that's something that's attractive about not only, enrolling and checking out threads, but also considering how you might use it in the future is, the fact that it is in the same environment, owned by
Mhm.
the same company and everything. And there is a convenience there of, just being used to what the meta platform looks like, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, threads, whatever, right? So we see that in other places too, right? I mean, if you're a geek like me with a Apple Watch and an iPhone and an iPad and my MacBook, like all sitting right next to each other, like you look at that and it does objectively, I can say it seems a little crazy, but there is a convenience in that environment and just
Right,
being kind of in the same platform, even though you might use each of those things for different things, different tasks, just like you might use Facebook, Instagram, or threads for different things. So
right,
yeah.
right. Well, and I think that that knowing, uh, and we're about to talk about it too, knowing Meta's intention to move that into the Fediverse, which I I went way down a rabbit hole yesterday about the Fediverse. So we'll talk about that. But knowing their intention to make that cross-platform communication uh, much more robust, so move it not just between Facebook and Instagram, but first bringing threads into the fold and then really opening that up um, through open source uh, technology and making that what is predicted to be a seamless conversation, quote unquote. We'll see. We'll
We'll
see
see.
how that bears out as far as seamlessness. But yeah, you can kind of see, you can kind of guess the roadmap there once you know what their intentions are.
Hmm.
A little bit my opinion before we talk about the Fediverse. The one thing that I think it's worth mentioning because it has bearing on the next part of our conversation, which is should you do it, should you not do it as business, is that right now there's not a desktop version of it. There's no usability for desktop, and that to me, as a person who gets paid to think about these things, that feels like a barrier right now.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but that's another thing that their intentions are to add that and some additional new features.
Yeah, yeah. And also as, marketers, not something that's totally unheard of for us.
Mhm.
Instagram was another platform that was really hard to use on anything other than your phone, even though there were maybe some, you know, web browser extensions and other tools to kind
Right,
of,
right.
get around some of those limitations. And now, it fits into our workflow really easily. So um it'll come in time,
Yeah,
but yeah, if you're looking for another reason, if you need another reason to not uh, jump on the threads bandwagon right now, that might be a really easy one to just say, yeah, I'll wait until it's a little easier for me to, publish, at my desk
right,
or whatever, but
right,
it's coming.
right. Yeah. So, and before we get to the discussion of strategy, if people should or shouldn't do it, let's delay that so that they have to listen longer. And let's talk about my new favorite topic, the Fediverse, and what that is. Um, and I'm going to just read from my notes because this is such new knowledge. Not that I'm not proud of it, but it's new. Fediverse, which is a word that is a combination of federation and universe. So very Star Trekky there. It's
Right.
a loose collective of decentralized servers that operate using open source standards. Unlike traditional social networks, the Fediverse allows users to connect and communicate with others, quote unquote, seamlessly. There's that word, across multiple platforms. There are some benefits or perceived benefits to the Fediverse as a user. It doesn't rely on algorithms. It doesn't scrape data in the same way. I think it is worth thinking when you're thinking about Meta. and some of their history, some of their baggage around personal data and what has happened on that platform. We're thinking about that when we think about the Fediverse. And so one of the sites that we have not really explored too much because it just didn't really feel like a place yet where we belonged is Mastodon,
Mhm.
which is part of this Fediverse. And it shows you the content of people and instances that you follow in chronological order instead of algorithmically.
Sure.
So it is speaking of Twitter, that's like old Twitter. It
Yeah.
is
Right.
just, the next thing that happened is the next thing you see. Um, and their feeling is that Mastodon that creates less stress on people because it is not designed in the way the algorithm is designed to keep you engaged and to prevent you from logging off.
Right.
You can it is that older social media, which is a weird combination of words, but that older social media logic, which is go on, check the latest, dip out once you're up to date.
Right.
Um, and it's worth knowing that when you join Threads, there is a disclaimer that pops up that says future versions of Threads will work within the Fediverse, a new type of social media that allows people to follow and interact with each other on different platforms. Now, it's easy to see, I think, as an objective outsider, what the drive might be for an organization like Meta to become a part of something like the Fediverse. But in my deep dive yesterday down the rabbit hole, what I learned was that even though Meta intends to do that, and they have made that a very public claim, there are current users on sites like Mastodon and some of the other ones that are involved that don't really want to see that happen because they have built a community on small platforms with a particular set of rules that are very distinct from things like Meta. And the
Mhm.
idea of having a big player like that come in, especially with some of that privacy baggage and some of the other things, they don't really love the idea of
Mhm.
them joining that family of the Fediverse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell me, in my book report about the Fediverse, tell, it is a thing and it is fun and everyone should do it. what what are your thoughts on all of that? The Fediverse, the possibilities?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll be really open and say I probably get um, irresponsibly overexcited anytime that I hear something open source because it
Hmm.
kind of feels like humans taking some control back or something. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I'm using humans as a really big term there because there are humans that work at Meta, but also we know that the way that they're building their system and thinking about to some of the points you just discussed about how a big part of their job is to develop a system that keeps people engaged and keeps people
Hmm.
on to the point of addiction and some really unhuman or inhumane kind of behaviors is just gross. So like
Hmm.
when I hear that something's open source and there's opportunity for development and a new way of doing things, I get excited about that. And I imagine that most of the people that interact with those kinds of technologies are the ones that, yeah, are maybe pushing back or a little hesitant about the idea of somebody like something like Meta dabbling in that space. From Meta's standpoint, I think it's pretty darn smart because it's a way for them to maybe, um, you know, start to break down the barrier or the perception that they're just a bunch of aliens, robots, iguanas, whatever they are that work there, um, you know, and that they can actually participate in an open source kind of environment too, and give some power back to the user and stuff. But Yeah, if I don't know how that might be governed or what limitations could be put on their involvement, whether it's limited or a straight up yes or no. I don't know what that looks like. I won't pretend to understand it, but um, I can see why there's both excitement and hesitation
Hmm.
from everyone involved. But yeah, the whole Fediverse thing, lots of learning there for me to really understand it in general and how different technologies might interact with it and what that could mean for marketers. And but I think it's like I said at the beginning, I think it's cool. I think it's
Hmm.
super cool to see people taking some control back and creating a space where resources are shared, development is a little non-traditional, and usually I'm sure there's bad actors in all of those kinds of spaces, but usually what happens there is control given back to people to get what maybe the
Hmm.
original intention was out of certain technologies, and social media I think is no exception, right? You
Right.
mentioned like old social media and stuff. They're that it is weird to say that because it wasn't that long ago, but I think some of those like core principles or functionalities of some of those first versions of social media, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, they were really just rooted in like some of the things that I think social media channels are trying to sell us on today, which is, global connection and
Hmm.
things like that, and it was that when it first started, or, at least that was at the root of these networks when they first started. And then follow the money, as soon as money
Right.
starts getting involved in ad revenue and stuff like that, a lot of things change. But yeah, so I'm rambling a bit now, but it's cool to see this new space kind of allowing for some new ways to do old things or new things, depending on
Right.
if you're talking
Right.
about social media. But
Yeah, probably the one analogy that helped me the most understand what the Fediverse looks like, how at an extremely high level how that could work, was one article I looked at compared that to email.
hmm,
So every email program has basically has a gate through which email, you can use Gmail, I can use Hotmail because I'm 400 years old. I can use Hotmail. And I can get an email coming from Gmail into Hotmail, and those work quote unquote seamlessly.
sure, yeah,
And so it's interesting to see sort of that journey back to that kind of interaction online, and really back to the roots of that one-to-one connection, uh, being able to get your message to someone no matter where, no matter what platform they're on.
yeah, yeah. From a business standpoint, it gives me a little concern, I guess, just because it's the unknown, right? Like we don't really
Right.
know what that might mean for us and how we interact with it. Um, from a personal standpoint, another thing that excites me about it is, as I have two young children at home, something we actually talk about every now and then because of either us seeing some nastiness on social media or how it's like affecting people negatively, or it's in the media or whatever. I start to think about my kids and like how,
Mhm.
what's that going to look like when they're interacting with that stuff when they're older. And we say it often, like how grateful we are that we didn't have it when we were in high school, and like what that would have changed for us. So I'm excited that there's innovation happening, and maybe a next iteration of social media as a whole happening this
Mhm.
way, and it could mean an improved experience, or maybe
Mhm.
dare I say a safer environment for our kids to interact when they get to the age of um, being on social media and stuff. But even that, as I say all of that, a similar feeling from the business standpoint, like it's still really unknown. So
Mhm.
I hesitate to say how hopeful I am, but to know that there's something new in the works is exciting, and going back to maybe some original roots of what social media was intended for with connection and stuff. Maybe there's a bright future that our kids can enjoy with it and not have to be involved in the nastiness of it that we
Right.
see and hear about today,
Right. Yeah. So let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit, thinking about Threads intention to move into the Fediverse and what that might look like as well. Because I think they're inextricable. If you are considering something, if you're considering Threads specifically as part of your strategy moving forward, it pays to understand the roadmap and what it thinks will be happening. And when I say it, I mean Threads. I know it's not a sentient being yet.
Not yet.
But how do you think sites like that, that are connected to the Fediverse, and that kind of connection affects business users across platforms? As you know from the notes, I have some thoughts. So I'll let you go first, though, because like I said, I've been in the rabbit hole. I've built my own little warren down here, and now I think this is where I live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, straight up, I'll be clear. I don't know. I really don't know. And it's kind of tough to imagine it. And I think it's difficult for me to imagine it because of just how like deeply ingrained the current state of social media is in our day to day.
Mhm.
The pay to play atmosphere, the like constant chasing of good content, and putting stuff out that people will interact with, whether it's organic or something that they saw in an ad, right? So it's so tough to like imagine another world, you know. But I guess similar to what I was saying before about how it could mean like a different future for our kids from a personal use standpoint. um, I like to imagine it on the business side too, where it's less about ads and algorithm and some of the like, I don't know, naughty words that maybe get associated with social media that
Mhm.
makes it all feel a little less genuine, and about like real human connection and stuff. And it's kind of fun to try and think about how businesses could you know experience similar benefits by
Mhm.
playing in a world that is more built on like genuine connection and conversation, and in a more like human controlled sort of
Mhm.
atmosphere. So um so yeah, again, I don't know. I don't
Right.
know, but I'm hopeful that it means something that's like a more human positive experience for
Mhm.
businesses, that yeah, brings us back to our roots of how we connect with other businesses and people, you know.
Right. Yeah, I see. Again, and I also don't know. So all predictions based on my admittedly very brief and possibly flawed understanding, but uh, the idea of people being able to curate a feed of just what they want to see. I mean, that has positives and it has pitfalls to it, right?
Right.
We know that if you're able to curate entirely, that there is some fear that people fall into an echo chamber
Right.
and aren't out looking for different experiences. Uh, Even knowing that if you can be a business that has been curated in someone's feed, then you know uh, you have a lot of information about who you're talking to, and you know a lot about how they feel about your company, unless it's a hate follow, I suppose.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we've ever really thought about hate followers, but I don't think we need to worry too much about that yet.
Right.
But it does seem, to your point about connection and being able to speak to people as humans, that there's a ton more possibility to be able to focus a message to people and be able to um, know who you're talking to focus that message, and really make, once you have made it into someone's feed, make whatever model of sales you ascribe to quicker, simpler,
Yeah.
because you are talking to hot prospects. The flip side being knowing that those platforms won't necessarily all be algorithm based. You're not going to be served to people who aren't looking for you. It's going to be tougher to
Mhm.
connect to new users. Really great to have the users you will have, but to add and to figure out how to do that, I think will be an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And what excites me about that is that means we have to innovate our message, right? You have to do something, and you have to be active about how you're going to attract new people in a space like that.
Mhm.
And I think it will be better. it- I That's a future I could see being better for users, better for businesses, just from the standpoint that you can't, if you're not able to pay to play, then the people who are paying to play and turning off your users aren't going to be there.
Yeah. Right.
Uh, and if they're there, they're going to have to use the same strategy you do, and they're going to have to bring something good. You're going to have to bring something to the table
Right.
for people to get views. And I that's not something that inherently scares me.
Right. Yeah. It's actually like really hopeful
Right.
to think about, you know, bringing it,
Right.
which, a constant challenge that a lot of marketers have, especially marketers that are working with organizations that have sales teams and stuff. There's that constant battle of, product and people, sales and marketing, and,
Mhm.
the kind of message or content that you're putting out. Not that you can't, like, I mean, we talk about products plenty for, our clients, but if there's a way to do that that's attractive, and there's a way that's
Mhm.
a huge turnoff, especially on social media. So, like, how do you talk about product in a way that's actually valuable and genuine for people? By the way, we should be doing this right now in the current
Right.
world that we're living in. But
Right.
in a place like this that's open forum and or open source, and with, a bit more control by by the user, like the fake crap ain't gonna fly. They're just gonna
Mhm.
disengage. So,
Right.
and especially if you can't pay to be in front of them, whether they want to see it or not.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting to think about.
And even as intentional as we try to be there with that current dynamic, and this is in every kind of media, there is still an aspect of spray and pray,
Right.
right? So uh, I think that spray and pray sort of attitude leads to uh, leads some people down a road of creating something that is made with less effort, less intentionality, in order to make lots and lots and lots of them ads, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to curating something a little more homemade. I can't, a little more boutiquey
Hmm.
to really connect with people. So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting challenge.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it
So we know enough about threads now, right? Enough to be
I,
dangerous.
definitely enough to be dangerous.
So, what do you think? Is this an easy yes? We've got to do this thing. Do we, or does anyone else have to jump on this threads bandwagon that 10 million people already have, or 100 million?
100
Sorry.
million people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So uh here is where I'm coming down on this. I don't think it's an easy yes.
Yeah.
Uh I think I think you what I think is this. Number one, if you think you're ever going to be there, it might pay to get your place at the table. It might pay now to set up your account. Particularly if you're a business, you want to make sure if you're going to move on there that you are the one that originates an account with your brand, with your name, all of that stuff in the space, even if you don't have a plan yet. But if you don't have a plan yet, don't do things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it might be worth claiming your space.
Yeah.
To make sure someone else doesn't get out there and impersonate you. Especially if that is something that people have been, I'm going to knock on wood. It's not something we have had happen to us yet, or any of the businesses we work with. But man, you talk about bad actors. That is a pretty easy target to for bad actors. So might be worth doing that if you're ever going to be out there. If you're never going to be, if you think you're never going to be out there, I don't know how you would know that right now, but then you could probably delay. A thing that came up in the research I was doing that is really, really making me think about like a not yet strategy on this is that perception. I mentioned that the chatter about Threads is that it's a nice Twitter. Well, the reality of it is, without pulling any punches here, it is a progressive Twitter versus a conservative Twitter. And I think as a business, you have to, a place I would be err on the side of caution would be where you want to balance your business and how you want to be perceived. If you want to be neutral, truly neutral, I think that it pays to hedge your bets at the moment and see if Threads continues to be progressive, leaning toward liberal, and to the point where people can see a divide, right? And because at that point, it becomes a message where you are. Mm-hmm. And you have to make the decision, do I have to be in both places and treat them in exactly the same way to remain neutral? Right. Now, hey, pal, if that doesn't concern you, and my personal feeling is, now it's different because I have to represent businesses that need to stay neutral. But I also know that not every client we have needs to stay neutral, and not every business needs to stay neutral. So I do think it's a consideration to pick your place. Mm-hmm. I don't know that takes away from my point of making sure that you have your spot on the platform. It just might mean you claim your spot and then don't do things with it. Yeah. Because I would really hate to see someone who has decided, we're going to lean conservative. We're going to stay with TikTok or not with TikTok, Twitter. And then have someone impersonating them. Right. On, if there is a divide, someone impersonating that account and confusing the message.
I think that's
worst case scenario, but you know how I am.
Right. Yeah. Probably worst case scenario there. And I do think that the group of people that would see you simply claiming your place and, creating your username, whatever that baseline work looks like. I think there's a really small group of people that would look at and see some sort of a lean, away from neutral, right? But there probably are some. But I think that the more important thing that happens by you doing that is brand security. You know what I mean? You're like you said,
right?
Maybe sure, avoiding an impersonator is a really nice benefit of doing that, but just, making sure that wherever people might find you, they at least see the right brand,
Hmm.
and even if you don't engage at all, and people might not recognize this consciously, they'll at least see, well, hey, this business is here, they're present, they've claimed their place, and they care about their brand, and that's all probably happening in a microsecond in their brain, and then they're on to the next thing, but that might be all the reason to at least do that claim your space thing
Right.
that you're talking about. So
Right.
yeah. Yeah, if a business, well, first off, it's probably a different answer depending on which business we're talking to today. But in general, I would say if a business asked us today, like, should I join Threads or not? I mean, ultimately, I would do my best to make sure that they're the ones making that decision and not
Hmm.
relying um, on a consultant or an agency like us to give them the answer. But I do think we could provide some guidance that sounds a lot like what we've just been saying in the last 6 minutes, which is,
Right.
probably the most valuable thing you could do right now is claim your space. If for some reason you just will never, ever, ever be there, then yeah, maybe don't worry about it.
Hmm.
And just be on your toes and maybe, do some social listening and monitoring to make sure that there is no bad actor out there doing anything. But um, that would be like the bare minimum that I think we could recommend to a business right now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And to watch it and see what people are doing. And if you think there is any possibility, even if you don't think there's a possibility, I think interacting in whatever way you feel comfortable individually, or seeing how other people are interacting with any social media platform is a super valuable experience.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you counted it out today and didn't pay attention to how it evolved, things that were changing about it, um, that would probably be at that's at least not letting you have as much information as you could use in the future for strategy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So my official vote, uh, in case you are wondering, for at least for the one business that I have total control over, quote unquote, total control over, is probably, but not yet.
Yeah.
I especially, like, let's talk about Twitter, because we are, if they are similar enough platforms. Here we reach the spoiler part of the discussion. um we locked down our Twitter account earlier this year,
Hmm.
uh and you can, if you'd like to find out why, we have a wonderful blog post, said the incredibly biased person, that you can read. So lots of reasons that we decided to step away from Twitter.
Hmm.
um, and the underlying reason is that we weren't nothing was happening for us there.
Right. Yeah.
So, like, there were enough other reasons
Yeah.
that it didn't make sense to pursue trying to make something happen there.
Right.
But in my mind, like, similar thing here, like, it's the same. It's not the same site, but it's so darn good. It's got that
Right.
500 characters,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but it's close enough in intention
Yeah.
that we know the strategy we were using wasn't working
Right.
on a site like it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
uh, what we would do as a business is figure out what that strategy is. I mean, I would be a fan of planning a strategy that we think will work for Threads, and seeing if there is anything about the users of that platform that they respond differently than what we were seeing on Twitter.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
but yeah, I mean, I think that it's important to kind of recognize the really basic principle of, um, or that helped inform us to disengage from Twitter. I mean, of course, there's, some things happening within the company that maybe helped raise the question, like, hey, is this a space that we should, really engage with?
Hmm.
Um, but then, you know, putting that, kind of recognizing that, but then putting it to the side and then getting back to, like, social media or marketing basic principles, which is, you
Hmm.
don't have to be everywhere. Be where you're going to be with intention and see what's happening, and then change, do something new, and grow. And we weren't doing those really basic fundamental things with Twitter. I think right now, if we decided today, Twitter Threads or really anything else, if we wanted to develop a strategy and grow an audience that way, we could just choose to do that, and do that in a way that we've seen other companies have success in
Hmm.
on that platform. But that's, quite a bit different than the work that we've been doing, and would take real dedication of time and resources from our team to do that and do it well, in a way that we can monitor it, see results,
Hmm.
continue to change, uh, um, and we've just got, like, I hate to make it sound so simple, but we just got other stuff to do, you know.
No,
So we
it's
just have
true.
other priorities.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the point for our listeners here, the point being that uh and this is a point that I think we come back to time and time and time again, that it is rarely the case that you have to, quote unquote, do something, whether
Mm.
that is you have to join this one or you have to close your account, you have to leave that one. It is, I, and I only use the word rarely because I know you hate it when I say never, but I would
Right.
like to say never. It's never the case that you
Yeah.
have to, in the big broad sense where someone could write an article and say you have to do this thing. Nope, nope, don't have to. What you quote unquote have to do is look at your strategy, look at who you're trying to talk to, find out where they are. That's the priority for every company.
Right.
And that part of it might lead you to, you quote unquote have to,
Yeah.
or it would be in your best interest to, it would benefit you too.
Right.
But without that part of it, of who you're talking to, what you want them to hear, and that really important piece that you're pointing out of your ability to do it,
Right.
because they could all be there, they could be primed to hear your message, but if you don't have the ability to get them that message, then, like, don't kill yourself to do it.
Right. Yeah.
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 Are there any red flags, general warning signs, anything like that that we should point out to people before we wrap up this little section and move on?
I mean, I don't want to create any controversy amidst our nice soft landing and transition
Hmm.
here on this episode, but um, and maybe just speaking personal opinion here, but I also know I'm not the only one with it. It's a meta product, so just, I don't know. Do I have to say anything else? Like, I mean, there have been plenty of previous examples of, security threats and,
Hmm.
straight up breaches, and, reasons why you should always tread lightly and be aware, whether we're talking about Threads or Facebook
Hmm.
or, any of them. So, um, yeah, just be careful.
Yeah.
And I really, like, maybe what I should say is be mindful. I don't want to
Hmm.
say, like, be careful, like, you should be walking on eggshells the whole time, but just be mindful and intentional about what you're doing, and pay attention, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the final thing for me to add to that, um, not to pile on negativity, I mean, I don't think it's not inherently negative, is to, as you're looking at the strategy, like, think about the human cost of it too. That
Yeah.
uh, I'm an entirely biased party here, because when we decided to pause things on Twitter, part of my experience was being the one out there representing our team and trying to see, you know, what the chatter was, doing non-technical social listening, and like that takes a human toll.
Yeah.
When when a platform like that devolves, as some of those users did have are, into a pretty negative space. So
Yeah.
I think, just alongside the payroll hour consideration, the human cost of what you're asking people to interact with and strategize around, is shouldn't be overlooked. Because
Right.
if it sucks to do it, um, you've got people to consider right here at home.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there,
Good point.
yeah, be good. I am literally just telling people to be nice to people, and that's
Yeah.
always a good point.
That is always. All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes on Threads, and I imagine probably be talking about it sometime not too far down the road.
I would think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's transition to something awesome where we share our recommendations. And I'm really excited for today because one, yeah, Sue's already
Yeah,
laughing at me
I was
because
waiting for the minute that I got to hear these words come out of your mouth, Ben.
I'm gonna geek out on another Christopher Nolan movie, and here I am like making a recommendation before even seeing the thing. But I've been looking forward to this movie for so long. One, because it's a Christopher Nolan movie, and I am just super biased and will like every Christopher Nolan movie, even like I like Oppenheimer before I've even seen it. But I've just been kind of following things, even though I know what happens. I'm aware of history. So there's not any big spoilers, but I'm also not trying to dive into like the script or the plot or anything like that too much because I do want to and just enjoy the movie fresh and clean. But I wanted I really like to listen to music scores while I'm working, or movie scores while I'm working. It's kind of like a way to almost like cheat and watch a movie while you're working too, because especially if it's a movie that you've seen and love. And Christopher Nolan always does a great job with music in his movies, or I should say the composers that he hires do a great job with his movies. Hans Zimmer and Ludwig Göransson, who did the score for Oppenheimer. And so I just listened to the score for the first time earlier this week, and listened to it again this morning. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird, and I kind of geeking out a little bit, but I just like how it kind of, I have like a story happening in my brain while I'm working, and also I can't do too much of listening to music with lyrics while I'm working because it seems to just get in the way of what I'm doing. So anyway, love the score. I'm so excited for the movie. The link that we'll share is to a really cool article from Variety where you hear from Ludwig talking about kind of his creative process and how he like intentionally chose to use violins because of their association with like horror movies and some of the like mood he was trying to create, for the audience. And he created the whole thing in 5 days. So I'm just like, I'm fascinated by like the creative process with music and stuff anyway. And then to think of somebody taking, this blockbuster movie, from a director who always has a strong musical presence in his movies, and to think that that got done in 5 days, like, I don't know, it just blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. So maybe on our next episode I'll actually recommend the movie, or I can probably just get that out of the way right now. Like, it's going to be great. I
You
heard
might
the
as
Rotten
well.
Tomatoes score is 92, so like, I mean, it's going to be awesome. So I don't know if we're going tonight or tomorrow night, but I'm so excited. So
Yeah. When the very first time I saw a preview for it, I was blown away by just how Cillian Murphy looks.
yeah, right.
Especially because Oppenheimer, to me, has he has a really distinctive look. about him as a human being, really recognizable, I think.
Yeah.
And just, man, they just nailed it.
Yeah.
It really looks great.
Mhm.
You got me, man. There's your Christopher Nolan for me.
Finally.
He
Thank
finally
goodness.
yeah. Yeah, well, he finally did something I'm interested in. So
Yeah.
no
There you go.
offense
Yeah. No,
to
that's all
both
right.
you and Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
But
Well, and Christian Bale and Batman lovers everywhere and everything else.
yeah, but okay, but listen, not hashtag not my Batman. We've talked about
I
this.
know. I know. I
We
understand.
haven't talked about the Flash either. I went and saw the Flash.
Oh, I
Speaking
haven't
of
seen it yet, but I've heard.
speaking of hashtag not my Batman, because that has hashtag my Batman in it.
Right. Yeah.
And that was fantastic.
Yeah. I heard it was good. I got to see that one too. Too much stuff
Yeah,
to watch.
it's true. It's true. But that's not my recommendation. My recommendation is this is a nice little homey recommendation. We we decided that volunteering at the car show, which is 6 hours of wandering the car show grounds, was not enough walking for one weekend. So we decided to go to Old World, Wisconsin. If you're not familiar with Old World, Wisconsin, it is an outdoor museum and it features 4 different distinct areas. That sounds right. And buildings that were brought from all over the state to recreate farms, villages, and all sorts of different businesses from the 1800s and beyond. So
Mhm.
a very cool opportunity. It sits on over 500 acres of land. It is the largest. What did they say? The tram driver said it is the largest open air museum in the country.
Hmm.
Something like that. So I just recalled he said that, and I turned to my husband and said, "That's a really niche thing to brag about." I think you're the only one doing it, so it's
Right.
might be easy to be the largest. Anyway, they're not the only one doing it, but the point is this: very cool experience. Just to go, and we had great weather, and even at 500 plus acres, they have shuttles that take you in between. So they will have full uh, a full recreation of not an entire farm, but the farmstead. So house, outbuildings, the whole yard set up in a realistic way, so you can experience that stuff. And then their reenactors are um, out there tending gardens, baking in vintage stoves. We talked to one reenactor that was they had sheared the sheep, they were making yarn, he was dyeing the yarn and was explaining the natural flowers and different seeds and things they use to dye the yarn. So really interesting. Um, Historically, if you are a hiker, if you like history and hiking, a great place to go because
Best
you
of
can,
both worlds.
yeah, you can hike between. It's quite a walk if you are not a hiker and don't like to hike. But that's what the trams are for. So
Yeah.
really cool experience. My husband and my oldest son went and wandered around there for the day, and you can spend quite a lot of time there.
Yeah.
We were there virtually open to close. They open at 11. I think they close at 4, and
Yeah. Wow.
we were able to spend almost the whole day. So,
That's really cool. I'd never even heard of it. So,
oh really?
yeah. Yeah. So that's on the list. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you could do from where we're at. You can do it in a day. It's a long day
Sure.
because
Yeah.
it's about a 2.5 hour drive.
Okay.
But if you don't want to, we have done it, and we've actually done it both ways, where we have, it's down in the southeastern part of the state, so plenty of places to stay.
Right.
other things that you could do if you wanted to go down and make a weekend of it. And
Right.
this time we just did it in a day trip, and also totally possible.
Right.
And
Nice.
it's, the fresh air, yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing, great experience.
Yeah.
So,
Especially for a summer activity, that's pretty cool. I mean, we're actually itching to go to the museum in Milwaukee, and right now the weather's so nice, and I don't know, I don't want to spend a whole day inside a museum, but this
mhm,
is maybe another opportunity to do something like that and be outside a bit too.
yeah,
Love it.
yeah. And particularly with kids, I
Yeah.
think we took the kids when they were younger. Um, and it still bears up if you're a history nerd,
Yeah.
but for the little kids, they can participate in all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Cool.
So old world Wisconsin, great place to go, hard thing to say. We will include the link if you want to check it out. And if you are listening from somewhere outside of Wisconsin, these, check it out in your own area. Living history
Hmm.
museums are very cool opportunities. And I think that uh, they don't necessarily get the visitor count that they might deserve for what they are out there trying to do. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that brings us to the end. Thank you, as always, for joining us. You can always catch up on your favorite podcast app, or you can find all of our episodes on our blog, along with other things like our Twitter blog, which I will also include the link so you can get to that here. But check it all out at exclamationqso.com/blog.
Awesome. Thanks, friends, for tuning in. Be awesome, and we'll see you next time.
The Osmology Podcast is a production of Exclamation Services. Thanks to Nick Mulliver for sound production and Kylie Ganther for our cover artwork.
Executive producers are me, Ben Bauer, and my friend Suzanne Campbell.